They said silence heals. They were wrong. For me, silence became a weapon, one I didn't know I'd use against my own blood. For almost a year I lived without sound. No laughter, no music, no whispers, just the hollow hum of my own thoughts echoing inside my skull. When you lose your hearing, you start to notice other things. The tremor in a smile, the rhythm of footsteps, the way people move when they think you can't hear them. My daughter moved differently after the accident. Her footsteps used to be light, playful, quick. After my hearing was gone, they became careful, calculated. Like she didn't want the old man to notice what was happening under his own roof. But I noticed. I just couldn't prove it. Then one morning, the silence broke. It happened in the kitchen, the kettle screaming before I realized it wasn't just steam, it was sound. I froze. The world came rushing back all at once, the creak of the window, the tick of the clock, the low, tired sigh escaping my own chaise. I could hear again. But I didn't tell her. Something inside me, maybe curiosity, maybe instinct, told me to stay quiet. Forget silence can see. I began to notice small things first. A drawer left half open, receipts crumpled in her purse, calls taken in another room. There was a rhythm to her lies, a pulse I could follow. Every night she whispered into her phone, thinking the old man was asleep, trapped in his silent world. I wasn't asleep. I was awake for the first time in years. One night I heard her say, "He'll sign it soon. He doesn't even read the papers anymore." Sign what? I waited, still and cold, in the next room. Her voice dropped lower, but I caught fragments. House. Transfer. Before he finds out, the silence turned heavy, pressing against the walls. My heart pounded so hard I was afraid she might hear it. She used to keep it clean. Now it smelled of perfume and secrets. In her drawer, I found papers, my bank documents, my signature, traced, not written. Perfect copies. She'd been preparing this for months. That night, I sat in the dark, listening to the house breathe. The walls creaked, the clock ticked, and from somewhere outside, a dog barked into the emptiness. It felt like the house itself was trying to warn me. She came home late. Her heels clicked down the hallway, confident, careless. I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep as she passed. Then she paused. For a moment she stood at my door and I felt her watching me. Then softly she whispered, "Soon, it'll all be mine." The door closed. I didn't move, but something inside me did. It was the sound of something breaking, not in the room, not in the walls, but in me. The silence had turned into a promise, and I was finally ready to keep it. The next morning I began my little game. If she wanted to treat me like a deaf old fool, I'd give her one, just smarter. I kept my act perfect. Still eyes, slow reactions, no response to sound. She'd talk near me, careless again, comfortable in her own deceit. But every word she dropped was a confession, a thread I could pull. I started small. I moved things around when she wasn't home. The papers she forged, her hidden envelopes, the folder under her bed. Then I'd put them back just slightly off. When she returned, she'd glance at them and freeze for a moment, eyes darting toward me. But I never looked up. I kept peeling apples, humming softly, only in my head. The fear began to show in her posture. Her tone changed when she spoke to me, sweet and sharp, like poison mixed with honey. "Dad, you shouldn't stay up so late," she'd say. "You need rest, rest." She wanted me quiet, predictable, an easy signature waiting for a page. So I gave her something to sign, first. That evening, I called our family lawyer. I didn't speak. I wrote, told him I needed to update my will, but wanted it private. He agreed to come on Sunday when she'd be out. I asked him for one favor, a silent clause, one she'd never expect. Meanwhile, I watched her spiral. Her calls became more frantic. "He's slower than I thought," she muttered once, pacing the kitchen. "But it's fine. Once it's done, I'll be free." Free, that word rang louder than any scream. Every sound she made became a weapon against her. The scrape of her shoes, the clink of her bracelets, the sigh she let out after every lie. They painted a rhythm of betrayal I couldn't unhear. Then one night, as she prepared dinner, I deliberately dropped a glass. It shattered across the floor, loud, sudden. I waited. She didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't even look up. She thought I hadn't heard, but I had. The sharp inhale she tried to hide, the quiet whisper under her breath. "Old man's losing it." No, my dear, the old man's just getting started. The silence wasn't my weakness anymore. It had become my disguise. Every lie has an echo, and I had learned to follow echoes. Her phone calls had patterns, always around the same hour, same room, same tone. She'd lower her voice, step near the window, and pretend she was checking messages. But the silence after each call told a story louder than the words themselves. That week, I began timing her. When she left the house, I'd check the landline, the drawers, the trash. One afternoon, I found what I was waiting for, a receipt from a real estate office 2 towns away. The amount was large enough to choke me. My name was on it, but the signature wasn't mine. There it was, proof my daughter wasn't working alone. The next Thursday, she left as usual, perfume thick in the air, heels echoing down the corridor like a metronome of deceit. I waited 10 minutes, then followed. I didn't drive. I took the bus wearing my old coat and hat. Nobody noticed the silent man at the back. She didn't go to a friend's house. She went to a cafe, the kind of place people choose for secrets. A man was waiting, younger than her, sharply dressed, nervous in a way criminals often are before they realize they've gone too far. I sat 2 tables away, pretending to read. When she spoke, I caught fragments between the clatter of cups. He'll sign soon, the will. We'll move everything before he finds out. The man nodded. And if he doesn't? She smiled. That same soft, practiced smile she once gave me when she wanted money for school. Then we'll help him forget again. Those words froze the air. I stared down at the paper, hands trembling, the page blurring in front of me. Help him forget. It wasn't just greed, it was planning. I left before she saw me. The bus ride home felt endless, the hum of the engine matching the noise inside my head. I didn't cry, I didn't rage, I just listened to everything. The wheels, the whispers, the ticking clock of the world moving toward something inevitable. That night I erased her voice from my answering machine. I erased every sound that belonged to her, because soon she wouldn't need to speak again. I'd already heard enough. Something changed in the house after that day. It wasn't just me anymore. The walls had started to listen too. I moved through the rooms like a shadow, quiet, deliberate. I left doors open just slightly, drawers half shut, chairs turned an inch to the side. Small things, unnoticeable to anyone who didn't know what to look for. But she noticed. The first night it happened, she froze at the kitchen door, eyes scanning the room. The papers she'd hidden behind the flower jar were gone. I had simply moved them to the table. She stood there for a long moment, staring, breathing unevenly. Then she whispered, "No, no, I put them away." I sat in the living room, pretending to read lips from the television. No sound, just flickering light. She looked at me from the doorway, fear just starting to seep through her calm. She didn't ask. Shh. He didn't dare. That's when I knew I had her. I began to feed the fear slowly. A misplaced key. An empty cup left where she hadn't placed it. A lamp turned off in the middle of the night. Each small act whispered to her that something unseen was moving in her world. The next morning, she was pale. Her eyes were red, her hands shaking as she made coffee. "Dad," she said carefully, have you been waking up at night?" I looked at her, blinked twice, the way she thought deaf people do when they don't understand. Then I smiled faintly and went back to my tea. That smile broke her composure. She turned away quickly, mumbling, "Never mind." But the house heard it, and so did I. The silence became alive, breathing between us, thick and watchful. Every creak in the floor, every sigh from the old wood made her flinch. I'd sit by the window at dusk, pretending to nap, while she checked the locks over and over. By the end of the week, she'd started keeping her phone close. Whiz. Pairing even softer when she thought I couldn't hear. "I don't know, maybe he knows something," she hissed one night. "Things keep moving, I can't think straight." Good. I didn't want her thinking straight. I wanted her afraid of her own shadow, the same way I'd been afraid of losing everything. And soon, fear would make her talk. Fear makes people talk, but it also makes them listen. By now she jumped at the smallest sound, the creak of a chair, the hum of a fridge, even the click of her own heels. I made sure of that. I wanted her mind fragile before I touched her heart. That morning I decided it was time to speak, without speaking. I wrote her a note. "I may not hear you, but I always know when you lie." Simple, unassuming. I left it on the kitchen counter where she'd find it beside her coffee cup. When she saw it, her face drained of color. She held it for a long moment, reading it over and over like she was trying to find another meaning. Then she looked at me. I was sitting at the table, pretending to fumble with my hearing aid. Her lips trembled, but she said nothing. She just threw the note in the trash and walked out too quickly. I heard her on the phone moments later. "Someone's been in my room again. I swear it's not him. He can't even hear me, but what if he can?" What if that's all I needed? One seed of doubt, and it would grow wild inside her. Over the next few days, I started leaving other messages. Not words exactly, just reminders. Her forged papers now with a faint fingerprint she didn't recognize. Her hidden folder placed on my bedside table one morning when she woke up. A cup of tea waiting for her after every phone call she tried to hide. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth. I wanted to see how long she could live inside her own lies before they started choking her. One night I caught her staring at me from the hallway. I pretended to sleep. She took a step closer, whispering so softly I almost said it. "Dad, if you can hear me, please, just don't make me do this." The sound of her voice cracked something in me. For a moment I wanted to tell her everything, that I'd heard it all, that she could still stop, but the words stayed behind my teeth. Because forgiveness without confession is just weakness, and I was done being weak. The house began to feel smaller, not because the walls moved, but because her fear filled every corner. She'd stopped sleeping upstairs, said she heard footsteps in the hallway, drawers opening at night. I never corrected her. Sometimes I'd walk past her door in the dark, dragging my slippers just enough for the sound to breathe through the silence. She started drinking. Not much, just enough to blur her voice, to loosen her tongue. Every night she'd sit at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, staring at me while pretending to scroll through her phone. Her eyes carried a question she was too afraid to ask. On the third night, I made sure she got her answer. I sat across from her, reading a newspaper. The air was still. The old clock ticked. She muttered, "I can't do this anymore," then froze, as if realizing she'd said it aloud. I didn't move. Then I turned a page, slowly, deliberately. She dropped her glass. The sound shattered across the tiles, sharp, violent. For a moment I saw pure terror in her eyes. Then she whispered, trembling, You heard that, didn't you?" I looked up, met her eyes, then looked back down, pretending to trace the headline with my fingers. She waited for a reaction that never came. Finally she laughed, a dry, broken sound. "Of course not," she muttered. "You can't." But doubt had already cracked her open. Over the next days she called the man again. I heard everything through the thin walls. "I think he knows," she said, voice shaking. "Then finish it before he does," the man answered. Her silence afterward was louder than anything I'd heard all week. That night I removed batteries from the smoke alarm, the one above the kitchen, just a small gesture, a sign. I wanted her to feel watched but not know how. When she noticed the next morning, she stood under it for minutes, whispering, "Who's doing this?" I sat in my chair sipping tea, pretending not to notice. She didn't know it yet, but she was confessing, in pieces. Every nervous glance, every whisper to the empty air. Soon she'd stop hiding her guilt, and when she did, I'd finally let her hear the truth, the same way she once let me live in silence. By the end of the week, the air between us was heavier than words. She'd stopped pretending to be calm. Her hands trembled when she cooked. Her eyes darted toward every sound. She kept locking doors that never stayed locked. The house had become a stage, and she was performing for an audience she couldn't see. I stayed in my chair by the window, the same spot I'd occupied for months. Still, patient, unreadable. It drove her mad. That evening, a storm rolled in, wind against the shutters, rain hissing against the glass. I watched her pace across the living room, phone in hand, whispering, "He's just sitting there. He never moves. It's like he knows I'm watching him." She turned toward me and for the first time didn't bother lowering her voice. Do you know?" I didn't respond. She laughed, sharp, brittle. "Of course not. You can't even hear me." She started walking closer, her reflection flickering in the lightning flashes outside. "You sit there like a ghost," she hissed. "Like you're waiting for something." I turned my head slightly, just enough for her to see my face in profile. Then I smiled. Not wide, not kind, just a quiet curve of knowing. That broke her. She slammed her phone down on the table, the screen cracking. "Stop it!" she screamed. "Stop acting like you don't hear me." The room fell still except for the rain. She froze, staring at me, realizing what she'd just said. "You heard that, didn't you?" she whispered. My eyes met hers, calm, empty, silent. I said nothing. The thunder answered for me. She backed away slowly, shaking her head. No, I'm imagining this. You can't, But she knew. Something in her face shifted, disbelief collapsing into horror. She stumbled backward, gripping the edge of the table, her breathing ragged. "You've been listening all this time." I didn't move, didn't blink. Just the steady tick of the clock filled the space between us. Then I stood up. 1 step. 2, the floorboards groaned under my weight. She flinched at every sound, every slow footstep toward her. When I reached her, I whispered, the first sound she'd heard from me in months. Finally! Her face went white. The storm swallowed the rest. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The thunder rolled somewhere far away, the kind that seems to circle a house rather than pass it. She stood frozen by the table, rainlight flickering over her face. I could see every thought running behind her eyes. Fear, confusion, and something deeper, regret. I broke the silence first. I got my hearing back 3 months ago. She didn't breathe. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I didn't tell you, I continued, voice steady but soft, because I needed to know who you'd become when you thought I couldn't hear you anymore. Her knees gave out a little. She sank into a chair, staring at the cracked phone screen like it could save her. You were listening, she whispered. I was. Her eyes filled, but the tears didn't fall yet. You don't understand. I wasn't trying to hurt you. You forged my name, I said quietly. You called a man who told you how to take everything I own. You let me sit in this house thinking we still trusted each other. The words landed like small stones, not shouted, not sharp, just heavy. She buried her face in her hands. I was scared, Dad. I didn't know what else to... The debt. I stopped her with a gesture. And instead of asking for help, you tried to bury me alive in silence. For the first time, she looked at me not like a stranger, but like a child again. I thought you'd lost everything, that you wouldn't understand what it's like to be drowning. I took a slow breath. The anger that had burned for weeks began to cool, leaving something colder, clarity. You're right, I said. I don't understand how my daughter could look at me and see a wallet instead of a father. Tears fell then, quiet, trembling. I turned toward the window. The storm had softened. Rain now just tapped against the glass, almost gentle. I can't undo what you did, I said, but I can decide what happens next. She looked up, eyes red. What are you going to do? I looked back at her, calm. I'm going to let you tell the truth, to me, to him, to the police if you have to, but this time, you'll do it with your own voice. She nodded, barely, and for the first time in months, I could tell she actually hear. D. She stayed seated, trembling, while I cleared the table. I didn't tell her to move, didn't ask her to speak. The quiet stretched between us like a line that might snap if we touched it too soon. When I sat down across from her, I saw the girl she used to be, the one who once waited for me at the school gate, the one who used to tell me every secret before she could sleep. That memory hurt more than any betrayal. I didn't plan it at first, she said, voice raw. It started small. I just wanted to pay off a loan. I told him I could get some of your savings just until I fixed things. Then he said if I could prove control of the house, he'd help. It was supposed to be temporary. I listened. Every word was jagged but honest. Then it grew, she continued. One lie needed another, and when you lost your hearing, it felt like a chance to make it easy. I told myself you wouldn't notice, that I'd fix it later somehow. You told yourself what you needed to, I said quietly. Shh. E nodded. Every night, I thought I'd stop. But then I'd see you sitting there, not reacting, not hearing. And I thought maybe you didn't care anymore. Maybe the silence meant you'd already given up on everything. I leaned forward. That's what silence does to people. It doesn't just hide the truth. It changes how you see it. Her eyes met mine then, and for the first time there was no calculation in them, just exhaustion. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know. We sat like that for a long time. The storm had passed, leaving the house soaked and clean, as if the world outside had decided to listen too. Finally I said, You're going to call him, the man from the cafe. You're going to tell him it's over, that everything's coming back to me. I won't go to the police if you do this the right way. One chance. That's all you get. She nodded, tears slipping silently down her face. And if he doesn't believe me? Then I'll speak, I said, and when I do, everyone will hear. She ached for my hand, hesitant, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to anymore. I let her. For the first time in months, we both listened, really listened, to the same silence. Morning came gray and heavy, the kind of morning that feels like it's waiting for a decision. The air still smelled of rain. I made coffee for both of us, her cup untouched, mine barely warm. The phone sat between us like a third presence, quiet but dangerous. She stared at it, fingers trembling. What if he doesn't answer? He will, I said. People like him always do, they can't resist control. She swallowed hard and dialed. Each ring echoed in the small kitchen. When his voice came through, smooth and confident, I watched her flinch. "Hey," he said, "got the paper signed?" Her throat tightened. "No, I can't do this anymore." There was a pause, then a cold laugh. "You can't back out now, you promised." She looked at me, I nodded once. "Keep going." "I lied," she said, voice cracking but strong. "My father can hear everything. He knows what I did. He knows what you planned." The tone on the other end shifted instantly. "What are you talking about? What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth," she whispered. "Listen to me," the man snapped, his voice rising. "You think he'll protect you? You think he won't go down with you? You're both finished." Before she could hang up, I reached across the table and spoke, slow and deliberate. "No, you are. Every word of this call is recorded. If you try to contact her again, the police will get it first." There was silence, then a click. For a long time, neither of us moved. The only sound was the clock, tick, 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 steady and merciless. She exhaled, shaking. "It's over." I nodded. "For him, yes. For us, that depends." Her face broke. The tears came fast this time. "I don't deserve forgiveness." "No," I said softly. "But maybe you deserve a second chance." She blinked, unsure she'd heard me right. "Redemption isn't Psalm. Anything you're given," I continued, "it's something you earn, starting now." She nodded, wiping her face. "I'll fix what I can." I pushed the phone toward her. "Then call the bank. We'll start there." As she dialed again, this time with shaking resolve instead of fear, I looked out the window. The storm had moved on, leaving sunlight flickering through the wet leaves. For the first time in months, the silence in the house wasn't heavy anymore. It was healing. Days passed, and the house began to sound alive again. Not with music or laughter, not yet, but with small things. The clink of dishes, the soft scrape of chairs, the hum of the old fridge. After months of strained silence, even those sounds felt like a gift. My daughter moved through the house differently now, careful, deliberate. Every morning she brought me tea, though I never asked. Every evening she made phone calls, to the bank, the lawyer, the accountant. I listened to her voice, steady and truthful as she unravelled every lie she'd built. Sometimes I wanted to stop her, to say it was enough, that I'd seen her remorse. But I knew she needed this. Repentance isn't in the words "I'm sorry." It's in the work that follows. One afternoon she stood at the window while I sat in my usual chair. "They're reversing the transfer," she said quietly. "The house will be in your name again by next week." I nodded. "Good." Then after a pause she added, "But I don't want to leave when it's done. Not until you want me to." I looked at her reflection in the glass, her face older, tired, but softer somehow. "I never wanted you gone," I said. "I just needed to know who you were." Her voice cracked. "And now that you do?" "Now," I said, "I want to know who you'll become." She turned then, and the light caught her tears. For the first time since everything fell apart, I didn't look away. We didn't need to fill the silence. It said enough. That evening we sat on the porch. The air smelled of rain and dust. Somewhere down the street a child laughed, and she smiled faintly. "You know," she said, "I used to hate silence. It made me feel invisible." "And now?" I asked. "Now," she said, "it feels like peace." I nodded. Silence doesn't hide the truth. It waits for it. We sat together until the sun slipped behind the clouds, the world quiet but alive. For the first time, she didn't need to say anything, and I didn't need to pretend I couldn't hear. We had both learned that sometimes the loudest forgiveness is the one unspoken. A month later, the house no longer felt haunted. The air was lighter, the rooms warmer. Sunlight spilled across the old wooden floorboards, touching corners that had been cold for too long. I could finally walk through the house without hearing the echo of what used to be broken between us. My daughter spent her mornings in the garden, trimming, planting, rebuilding small things. Watching her work was like watching someone try to stitch time back together with bare hands, and somehow it was working. One afternoon she came in with dirt on her palms and a shy smile on her face. "The roses are coming back," she said. "I thought the roots were gone, but they weren't. They just needed care." I looked at her for a long time before answering. "That's how people are," I said. "We bury the best parts of ourselves, and sometimes we just need a season to grow again." She sat beside me then, not as someone seeking forgiveness, but as someone trying to live differently. There was a kind of peace in that. Later that evening she brought out an old cassette player from the attic. It was something I hadn't seen since her mother passed. "I found this," she said softly. "I thought we could listen to it together." When she pressed play, a familiar voice filled the room. her mother's laughter followed by a much younger version of her singing off-key in the background. We both laughed, real, unguarded laughter, the kind that comes only after. Pain has been faced, not avoided. When the tape clicked off, she turned to me. "Do you think she'd forgive me?" I smiled faintly. "She already has. That's what love does. It keeps listening, even after we stop speaking." She nodded, tears in her eyes, but not in sadness this time, just release. The sun had set by then, and the quiet settled around us again, not as punishment, not as fear, but as peace. I closed my eyes and listened to the sound of her breathing beside me. For the first time in a long while, the silence wasn't empty. It was full of forgiveness, of beginnings, of everything we didn't have to say anymore.